The SS Educational Endeavour was not, by any measure, an impressive vessel. A converted cargo hauler retrofitted with classrooms, dormitories, and enough safety protocols to satisfy even the most paranoid of parent-teacher associations, it lumbered through space with all the grace of a sedated cow. But what it lacked in aesthetics, it made up for in educational value, or so claimed the brochure that had convinced 12 different school boards to send their students on this particular adventure through the Omega Centauri cluster. Mr. Peterson, a man whose remaining hair had given up the fight against stress-induced baldness years ago, stood at the front of the main classroom pod, desperately trying to maintain order. He clutched his digital clipboard like a life preserver as 30 human children, ages 10 to 12, demonstrated why the ship's artificial gravity was tested to withstand small meteorite impacts. "Now, class," he called out over the chaos, his voice carrying the weary resignation of someone who had long ago accepted their fate. "Who can tell me about the historical significance of the Third Galactic Congress's decision to standardize bathroom sign translations?" In the back row, Tommy Wilson was conducting an impromptu experiment on the aerodynamics of paper spacecraft. In the front, Jenny Martinez had dismantled her desk's holoprojector and was quietly reprogramming it to display what appeared to be dancing dinosaurs. And somewhere in the middle, the Chang twins were passing notes written in a code that combined advanced mathematics with emoji. Mr. Peterson didn't notice any of this. Mr. Peterson had mastered the art of not noticing things. It was, in his professional opinion, the key to maintaining what remained of his sanity. Meanwhile, approximately 50,000 kilometers off the Educational Endeavour's port bow, Captain Kraz'Thull of the pirate vessel Dread Profit Margin was having what he considered to be an excellent day. His three-eyed gaze was fixed on the scan readings of the approaching ship, mandibles clicking in what passed for a smile among his species. A school ship, his first mate, Greg, who had refused to adopt a more pirate-appropriate name despite multiple suggestions, confirmed with a raised eyebrow. Indeed, Kraz'Thull purred, running a clawed hand over his meticulously polished cranial ridges. "And not just any school ship, one carrying human offspring. This will be the easiest score of our careers." Greg, who had actually met human children before, opened his mouth to offer a warning. Then he closed it again. Some lessons, he decided, were best learned through experience. Besides, he'd been meaning to use some of his accumulated vacation days. "Think about it," Kraz'Thull continued, warming to his theme. "A single overwhelmed teacher, a bunch of helpless younglings, and a ship full of valuable educational equipment. We'll be in and out before anyone knows what hit them. Set an intercept course." The Dread Profit Margin, a vessel whose name had been chosen during what Greg suspected was a particularly sarcastic meeting of the ship's branding committee, adjusted its course. Its weapons systems, recently upgraded with the proceeds from their last raid on a shipment of luxury pet food, hummed to life. Back on the Educational Endeavour, Lisa Thompson, self-appointed class president, future galactic senator, and current holder of the record for most consecutive perfect attendance awards, was the first to notice the approaching ship. She raised her hand with the precise angle and energy that had won her most likely to dislocate a shoulder through enthusiasm in last year's class awards. "Mr. Peterson," she called out, "I believe we're about to be boarded by pirates." "Very good." Lisa, Mr. Peterson replied automatically, not looking up from his clipboard. "But we're discussing interstellar governance right now. Please save your space piracy questions for social studies." The first warning shot across their bow rattled the classroom's windows. Mr. Peterson adjusted his tie and continued his lecture, having long ago learned to tune out any distraction less severe than an actual hull breach. The children, however, were paying very close attention indeed. Throughout the classroom, 30 pairs of eyes lit up with the special gleam that only appears when children realize they're about to experience something that definitely wasn't in the approved curriculum. Captain Kraz'Thull, still blissfully unaware of his impending education in human child psychology, began preparing his boarding speech. He was particularly proud of the part about surrender or face the consequences. It had taken him 3 hours to compose, and he'd included what he considered to be some very intimidating metaphors. He was about to learn that there are consequences, and then there are consequences involving 30 bored human children who have just been given an excuse to misbehave. Captain Kraz'Thull's boarding party consisted of his most intimidating crew members, which wasn't saying much considering they'd recruited most of them from a failed dinner theatre production of Space Pirates of Penzance. Still, they made an effort, brandishing their weapons and trying to look menacing as they cut through the educational Endeavour's main airlock. Remember, Kraz'Thull whispered to his team, "We're dealing with human children. They're basically tiny, underdeveloped versions of regular humans. How hard could this be?" The universe, which has a particular fondness for ironic timing, chose that exact moment to introduce him to Jenny Martinez. Jenny was 11 years and 4 months old, had braces with purple bands, and had once reprogrammed her mother's coffee maker to play the theme from Space Wars every time it finished brewing. She was also, as it happened, spending her free period giving the ship's cleaning bots what she called personality upgrades. The first sign that something was wrong came when Kraz'Thull's advanced scout rounded a corner and came face-to-face plate with CleanBot Unit 47 billion. Under normal circumstances, 47 billion would have continued its predetermined cleaning route while politely asking any obstacles to step aside. These were not normal circumstances. "Greetings, potential dirt source," the bot announced in what Jenny would later describe as its happy voice. "Would you like to experience maximum cleanliness?" The scout, whose name was Bernard, and who had only become a pirate because his career counselor had terrible handwriting and had actually recommended pilot, barely had time to scream before the bot's industrial-grade cleaning protocols engaged. The sound of pressurized soap foam being deployed at speeds normally reserved for emergency rocket launches echoed through the corridor. Bernard's screams took on a distinctly bubbling quality. "Status report," Kraz'Thull demanded over the comm channel. The only response was the sound of someone gargling what appeared to be lavender-scented cleaning solution. The captain led his team forward, only to find the corridor blocked by a wall of slowly expanding soap foam. Through the bubbles he could make out Bernard's figure, now thoroughly sanitized and smelling strongly of artificial spring meadow. "It's in my everything," Bernard reported miserably. "Everything is clean. So clean." Before Kraz'Thull could respond, 3 more cleaning bots rounded the corner. Their optical sensors glowed with what he would later swear was malicious glee. Their cleaning solution reservoirs, normally filled with standard detergent, had been modified to contain what Jenny called her special mixture. "New friends detected," announced the lead bot. "Initiating group cleaning experience." "Retreat," someone yelled. But it was too late. The bots had them surrounded, their cleaning attachments whirring with enthusiasm that went well beyond their factory settings. What followed would later be described in pirate legend as the Great Sudsing. Security footage, which would become a viral hit across 3 sectors, showed hardened space pirates running in terror from determined cleaning bots, their fearsome weapons and carefully cultivated intimidating appearances reduced to squeaky clean irrelevance. "Please remain still for optimal sanitization," the bots called out cheerfully as they pursued their victims. Resistance only increases required cleaning intensity. From her hiding spot in a maintenance duct, Jenny watched through her tablet as her modified bots performed exactly as programmed. She'd added a few special features too, like the ability to detect elevated stress levels and respond with what she called aggressive calming protocols, which mainly involved spraying lavender-scented foam while playing soothing elevator music. The pirates, now thoroughly cleaned and smelling like a combination of fresh linen and tropical breeze, beat a hasty retreat back to their ship. Several of them were hiccuping bubbles. What Kraz'Thull sputtered, trying to maintain his dignity while dripping lemony fresh foam. What kind of cleaning bots were those? The good kind, Jenny whispered to herself, already planning upgrades for Phase 2. She'd always believed that cleanliness was next to godliness, and she was about to make these pirates the most godly beings in the sector. Mr. Peterson, meanwhile, had moved on to his lecture about the importance of proper waste management protocols in space stations. He paused briefly to note that the air seemed fresher than usual, then continued without missing a beat. Back on the dread profit margin, Bernard was still trying to get the taste of industrial strength mint out of his mouth. "Captain," he ventured carefully, "perhaps we should consider a different approach." Kraz'Thull, whose fearsome cranial ridges were now gleaming with an unprecedented shine, ignored him. He was too busy trying to figure out why his naturally grey scales were now giving off a slight sparkle in direct light. "This isn't over," he declared, though the effect was somewhat undermined by the bubble that escaped his mouth as he spoke. "No one humiliates the crew of the dread profit margin. We'll show these humans what happens when they—" He was interrupted by a cheerful beeping sound. Somehow one of the cleaning bots had followed them back to their ship and was now eyeing their notoriously messy cargo hold with what could only be described as professional interest. The resulting panic would later be edited out of official pirate records, though the security footage would become a favorite at the annual Galactic Coast Guard holiday party. Tommy Wilson had been preparing for this moment his entire life, or at least since last Tuesday, when he'd successfully smuggled aboard what he called his strategic sugar reserve, a collection of candies so comprehensive it would have made a dentist faint. Desperate times call for desperate measures, he announced solemnly to the gathered students, unzipping his special compartmentalized backpack. Within seconds, the air was filled with flying candy bars, gummy treats, and things that probably violated several intergalactic food safety regulations. "Is that Plutonian pixie dust?" Karen Chang asked in awe, catching a package of the notorious space candy known for its ability to make regular sugar look like amateur hour. "And Martian mega sours," Tommy confirmed proudly. "I've been trading my homework answers for the good stuff for months." The sugar hit the bloodstream of 30 human children approximately 3 minutes before the pirates launched their second boarding attempt. This time, Captain Kraz'Thull had equipped his crew with cleaning bot-resistant gear. What he hadn't equipped them for was what human children on a sugar high could accomplish in zero gravity. It started with a mysterious malfunction in the ship's artificial gravity systems. One moment, the pirates were storming through the corridors in full tactical formation. The next, they were floating helplessly while small humans ricocheted off the walls around them like sugar-powered pinballs. "Look, I'm a space butterfly," announced one child, spinning past Kraz'Thull's head, trailing candy wrappers like cosmic debris. "That's physically impossible," protested Greg, who was trying to maintain some sense of professional dignity while slowly rotating upside down. The sugar content in their bloodstream shouldn't allow for this level of, "Is that child running on the ceiling?" Indeed, several students had discovered that in zero gravity, with enough sugar-fueled enthusiasm, every surface became a potential flaw. The pirates watched in horror as children treated Newton's laws of motion less like fundamental principles of the universe and more like polite suggestions. "Tag." Urit shouted, a blur that might have been Tommy Wilson, using a startled pirate as a launching pad to propel himself down the corridor. No fair using pirates as propulsion devices, called another child, before doing exactly the same thing. The pirates, trained in zero-gravity combat but completely unprepared for zero-gravity chaos theory as interpreted by sugar-high children, found themselves serving as unwilling participants in what appeared to be a combination of tag, pinball, and performance art. "Reform the line," Kraz'Thull tried to order, but it's difficult to maintain tactical formation when you're being used as an impromptu tetherball pole by children playing what they called extreme space Marco Polo. Back in the classroom, Mr. Peterson was explaining the finer points of space station waste recycling systems, having wedged himself firmly into his teaching podium when the gravity went out. He'd simply adjusted his tie and continued lecturing, operating on the principle that if he didn't acknowledge the lack of gravity, it couldn't affect his lesson plan. As you can see, he droned, pointedly ignoring the student doing cartwheels past the window. The importance of proper filtration cannot be overstated. Meanwhile, the pirates were learning several important lessons about physics, specifically. 1. A small human child hopped up on space candy can generate surprisingly high velocities in zero gravity. 2. The law of conservation of momentum applies double when that momentum is sugar-powered. 3. Everything is a bouncy castle if you believe hard enough and have enough plutonian pixie dust in your system. Captain called out one of the pirates, currently serving as an unwilling merry-go-round for 3 spinning children. "I don't think the cleaning bot resistance gear is helping." "Retreat," Kraz'Thull tried to order, but the word came out garbled as he attempted to dodge a floating stream of candy wrappers. The effect was somewhat undermined by the fact that he was slowly tumbling end over end, having been used as a launching pad for what the children were calling extreme space leapfrog. The pirates' tactical withdrawal was less of a retreat and more of a physics-assisted evacuation, as the children helpfully showed them the way out by using them as zero-gravity bumper cars. As the airlock closed behind the last fleeing pirate, Tommy Wilson surveyed his remaining candy stash with satisfaction. "I still have the emergency reserves," he announced to his classmates, who were finally starting to drift down from their sugar-induced orbital patterns. The artificial gravity clicked back on with suspicious timing, depositing 30 giggling children safely onto the floor. Mr. Peterson, still at his podium, merely adjusted his glasses and continued, now, regarding the proper maintenance of water recycling systems. On the bridge of the dread profit margin, Kraz'Thull stared at his shell-shocked crew and wondered if it was too late to consider a career change. Perhaps something nice and peaceful, like bond disposal or volcano monitoring. The Chang twins had always taken their science education very seriously. Perhaps too seriously, according to the 3 separate review boards that had investigated last semester's volcanic science fair incident. But now, barricaded in the Educational Endeavors Science Lab, their particular brand of academic enthusiasm was about to prove unexpectedly useful. Karen said, pulling up the lab's safety protocols on her tablet. Do you remember when Mum said we should stop treating warning labels as challenge descriptions? Kevin, already mixing chemicals with the confident air of someone who considered highly volatile to be a friendly suggestion, grinned. Mum's not here. The pirates' third boarding attempt started promisingly enough. They'd managed to bypass the cleaning bots now mysteriously playing calming spa music in the corridors and navigate around the zero-gravity section still echoing with sugar-fueled giggles. Captain Kraz'Thull had even prepared an especially threatening speech about the consequences of resistance. He never got to deliver it. Warning announced the ship's safety system, its usual calm voice somehow managing to convey deep concern. Unauthorized experimental protocols detected in Science Lab 3. Containment measures advised. Please note that management is not responsible for any spontaneous transformations, dimensional rifts, or violations of the laws of physics. How bad could it be, Kraz'Thull wondered aloud, right before the first wave of what would later be described in the incident report as theoretically impossible, but definitely purple slime oozed under the lab door. Inside the lab, the Chang twins were in their element. Karen had pulled up the lab's entire inventory on her tablet and was cross-referencing it with what she called their fun list. Kevin was orchestrating what he insisted was a completely controlled reaction, despite the fact that it was glowing in colors that shouldn't exist in this dimension. Did you know, Karen announced cheerfully through the lab's intercom, that when you mix these completely safe educational chemicals together, they create an exponentially expanding foam that's attracted to organic life forms? That's not possible, Greg protested, right before being engulfed by a wave of iridescent foam that seemed to be humming the theme from Space Wars. The laws of physics would like to disagree with you, Kevin replied, but they're currently busy trying to figure out what we just did to them. The pirates watched in horror as the corridor filled with what appeared to be a collaboration between a lava lamp and a quantum physics experiment gone wrong. The substance moved with definite purpose, forming shapes that Euclidean geometry hadn't prepared them for. Is it spelling words? One pirate asked nervously. Indeed, the slime had arranged itself to spell out "please proceed to nearest exit" before morphing into what appeared to be a very detailed flow chart showing the quickest escape routes. Don't worry, Karen's voice came through the intercom again. We're pretty sure none of this is lethal. We followed all the safety protocols. All of them, Kevin asked. Well, the important parts. The parts that weren't in Comic Sans. Captain Kraz'Thull, who had seen many strange things in his pirating career, but never anything that made his antennae twist themselves into a pretzel, decided it was time for a strategic reassessment. Fall back, he ordered, trying to maintain his dignity while being pursued by what appeared to be a sentient rainbow with opinions about personal space. But sir, one of his crew protested, Our reputation can wait until we figure out why my scales are now glowing in the dark. Kraz'Thull snapped back. The retreat might have been orderly if the twins hadn't chosen that moment to demonstrate their latest discovery that certain combinations of educational supplies could create localized gravity fluctuations. Look, Kevin called out excitedly. We've mathematically proven that up and down are actually optional concepts. The pirates found themselves alternately floating and dropping as gravity decided to take a vacation by sections. The slime, apparently unbound by normal physical laws, used this to its advantage, creating abstract art installations with their flailing forms. Mr. Peterson, now discussing the fascinating topic of proper airlock maintenance procedures, paused only briefly when a group of screaming pirates floated past his classroom window, pursued by what appeared to be a physics-defying light show. As you can see, he continued, adjusting his permanently crooked tie. The importance of proper seal maintenance cannot be overstated. Back in the lab, the Chang twins were already documenting their observations for their next science fair project. "Do you think we should mention the part where we temporarily redefined the properties of matter?" Karen asked, taking careful notes. "Probably not," Kevin replied, watching through the security feed as the last of the pirates fled, now sporting various unprecedented hair colors and trailing sparkles. "Mom said we should try to be more subtle about pushing the boundaries of known science." On the bridge of the dread profit margin, Captain Kraz'Thull stared at his reflection in a viewport, trying to come to terms with the fact that his naturally intimidating cranial ridges were now emitting a soft pastel glow and occasionally playing what sounded suspiciously like elevator music. "Greg," he said quietly, "when you suggested we avoid ships carrying human children, you might have had a point." "Should I update our target selection protocols?" Sir Greg asked, tactfully not mentioning the fact that his captain's antennae were now shaped like question marks. "Update them? Encrypt them. Carve them in stone. Get them tattooed on every crew member's forehead backwards so they see it every morning in the mirror." Kraz'Thull paused, watching as his scales cycled through a series of colors that would have made a disco ball jealous. "And someone please figure out how to make this stop. The light show is making it very difficult to brood menacingly." Lisa Thompson hadn't spent 3 consecutive terms as class president by lacking organizational skills. While the Chang twins were rewriting physics and Tommy's sugar-fueled army was defying gravity, she had been planning. Now, standing on a cafeteria table with the authority of someone who had never received less than an A in leadership skills, she was ready to end this. "Fellow students," she announced, her voice carrying the weight of someone who had memorized the entire student handbook specifically to find its loopholes, "it's time for Operation Homework's revenge." The cafeteria, normally a place of controlled chaos, had been transformed into what Lisa called a tactical response center and what would have given any military strategist an aneurysm. The lunch tables had been arranged in a formation that somehow violated both spatial geometry and the school's furniture arrangement policies. "Remember," she continued, "according to page 47, paragraph 3 of the Student Safety Guidelines, we are technically allowed to engage in defensive educational demonstrations as long as we file the proper paperwork afterward." "Did you actually file the paperwork?" asked a student from the back. "I filed it in triplicate," Lisa confirmed, "and backdated it with permission from future me, who I elected as temporary vice president for this specific purpose. Now, to your stations." The pirates, still recovering from their encounters with cleaning bots, sugar-powered zero-gravity chaos, and physics-breaking slime, were unprepared for what awaited them in their 4th boarding attempt. They had expected resistance. They had not expected organization. "Sector 1. Deploy Operation Lunch Lady's Revenge," Lisa's voice commanded over the ship's intercom, which had been redirected through what appeared to be a modified karaoke machine. The pirates rounded a corner to find themselves facing a barrage of cafeteria food that seemed to defy both gravity and appetite. The mysterious Tuesday surprise, never properly identified by the school's nutrition board, proved particularly effective as a defensive weapon. Is that meatloaf moving on its own?" one pirate asked in horror. "That's not even the worst part," another responded, watching as a glob of what might have been pudding formed itself into a surprisingly detailed portrait of their captain before launching itself at their position. Captain Kraz'Thull, his still glowing cranial ridges now covered in what the cafeteria insisted was gravy, tried to rally his troops. "We are feared pirates. We will not be defeated by. Is that macaroni spelling out 'please leave' in cursive?" "Actually, that's Lisa's signature move," explained a helpful voice from the ventilation system. She got an A in creative food architecture. The counterattack had been perfectly coordinated. Jenny's cleaning bots, now equipped with what appeared to be cafeteria condiment dispensers, provided covering fire. Tommy's sugar-powered shock troops executed perfect zero-gravity flanking maneuvers. The Chang twins' experimental slime had somehow developed a taste for pirate boots. And through it all, Lisa Thompson's voice continued giving commands with the precision of someone who color-coded their homework by subject, subchapter, and emotional resonance. "Deploy the secret weapon," she ordered, and the cafeteria doors burst open to reveal what the students had dubbed the Lunch Lady Special, a rolling tide of mystery meat that moved with disturbing intelligence and appeared to be humming the school fight song. It was at this exact moment that Mr. Peterson, who had finally run out of material about waste management protocols, stepped into the corridor. He adjusted his glasses, looked at the scene before him, pirates covered in food, glowing in various colors, and being chased by sentient cafeteria offerings while children executed complex tactical maneuvers in varying states of gravity, and finally spoke. "Ah," he said, with the calm of someone whose grip on reality had long ago developed calluses, "I see you've started the practical demonstration portion of today's lesson." Every student froze. Every pirate stopped mid-panic. Even the experimental slime paused its pursuit of unlucky space boots. "Excellent use of cross-disciplinary applications," Mr. Peterson continued, making notes on his clipboard. "I see physics, chemistry, tactical planning, and is that my lunch?" He peered at a glob of something that might have once been sandwich adjacent, now organizing smaller food particles into battle formations. Sir Captain Kraz'Thull began, trying to maintain dignity while covered in 3 different types of space pudding. "We're actually here to—" "Late admission to the class," Mr. Peterson interrupted, adding another note. "I'll need to see your transfer paperwork. And I must say, your demonstration of the effects of non-standard gravity on food fight dynamics is quite impressive. A bit messy, but impressive." Lisa Thompson, recognizing an opportunity that only comes once in a student government career, stepped forward. "Actually, Mr. Peterson, they were just leaving. They failed to properly file their visitor badges according to Section 5, subsection C of the School Safety Protocol." "Ah," Mr. Peterson nodded sagely. "Well, we can't have that. Proper documentation is essential for maintaining educational standards. I'm afraid you'll have to come back another time, after completing Forms 27,639C4 and the Standard Liability Waiver for exposure to experimental cafeteria conditions." The pirates, faced with the combined horror of administrative paperwork and another wave of approaching mystery meat, finally broke. Their retreat was less of a tactical withdrawal and more of a desperate scramble, leaving behind only a trail of glitter and the faint sound of elevator music emanating from their captain's still glowing cranial ridges. "Well then," Mr. Peterson said, turning back to his class as if nothing unusual had occurred, "shall we continue with our discussion of proper documentation procedures? I believe we were about to cover the fascinating topic of triplicate forms." Lisa Thompson smiled the smile of someone who had just added repelled space pirates to their extracurricular activities list. In the background, the Chang twins were already collecting samples of food slime fusion for further study, while Tommy Wilson began calculating how much of his emergency candy reserve would be needed to maintain a sugar-powered defense perimeter. And somewhere in the ventilation system, Jenny Martinez was teaching the cleaning bots to play We Are the Champions using only their spray nozzles and bubble generators. The official report filed with the Galactic Pirate Registry regarding the Dread Prophet Margin's encounter with the SS Educational Endeavour was surprisingly brief tactical withdrawal due to unexpected resistance. Ship requires extensive cleaning, decontamination, and removal of inexplicable disco lighting effects. Recommend updating threat assessment protocols. The unofficial version, whispered in pirate bars across 3 sectors, was considerably more detailed and usually ended with the storyteller rocking back and forth while muttering about sentient lunch meat and children who treated physics like a set of optional guidelines. Captain Kraz'Thull, still faintly glowing and occasionally emitting the sounds of easy-listening space jazz, called an emergency meeting of the Galactic Pirate Council. His motion to add never, ever, ever raid ships containing human children to the official pirate code passed unanimously, particularly after he presented his crew's therapy bills. Greg, who had taken to carrying around a stuffed animal for comfort, submitted his own addendum. "If you see a school ship, run. If you hear children laughing, run faster. If someone offers you space candy, change careers immediately." Back on the educational endeavor, Mr. Peterson was grading the students' field trip reports. Lisa Thompson's 40-page dissertation on improvisational defense strategies in educational environments of practical application received an A and a note suggesting publication in the School Safety Quarterly. The Chang twins submitted their report in the form of a scientific paper titled "Quantum Uncertainties in Cafeteria-Based Physics: Why Food Should Not Bend Space-Time But Sometimes Does Anyway." The peer review board is still trying to determine if they accidentally invented a new branch of physics or just broke the existing ones. Tommy Wilson's contribution was shorter sugar is an excellent renewable energy source for orbital mechanics. Additional research funding requested, he included a candy wrapper budget that made the school nutritionist faint. Jenny Martinez's cleaning bots had formed a union and were demanding better working conditions and premium-grade cleaning solutions. They had also started a choir and were now offering performances of Pirates of Penzance with special effects provided by their soap dispensers. The cafeteria staff received a commendation for creative use of mystery meat in defensive scenarios and a strongly worded request to explain exactly what was in Tuesday's surprise. They declined to comment, citing national security concerns. Mr. Peterson submitted his own report to the school board, noting only that the students had shown exceptional engagement with the practical applications of space station operations and creative problem-solving skills. He did request additional funding for cleaning supplies and gravity stabilizers, but mainly because the forms needed to be filed in triplicate and he enjoyed the paperwork. The story spread throughout the galaxy, growing with each retelling. Some said the children had summoned ancient cosmic forces. Others claimed they had merely demonstrated why humanity's offspring were the most terrifying force in the known universe. The truth, as usual, lay somewhere in between, probably covered in glitter and experimental slime. Years later, whenever a pirate ship's sensors detected an approaching school vessel, the captain would inevitably remember the legend of the educational endeavor. They would think about the cleaning bots that played jazz, the slime that defied physics, the food that fought back, and the children who treated the laws of nature like polite suggestions. Then they would turn their ships around and flee at maximum speed, leaving behind only the echo of a valuable lesson learned: never underestimate a ship full of human children, especially if they're bored, supervised by someone determinedly oblivious, and have access to both a science lab and a cafeteria. As for the students of the SS Educational Endeavor, they received perfect scores in practical applications of space safety protocols and went on to have surprisingly successful careers in fields ranging from quantum physics to chemical warfare to professional cleaning bot choreography. And Mr. Peterson? He went right back to teaching, secure in the knowledge that as long as all the proper forms were filed, there was no situation that couldn't be handled with a properly organized lesson plan.